Hi and welcome back. Today I'm going to make some junk journal ephemera, but I think it's not only junk journal ephemera. You also can use these in any other journals or planners just to decorate them. And I'm using some old playing cards from my grandmother. When I was a child, we played a lot together, and it was not full, so I decided instead of throwing it away, I'm going to use it and create some art. I'm using flash paints today. These are vinyl paints. You can use acrylic or gouache. That's no problem. I would recommend something that is a bit opaque, so the background gets covered up in the areas where we are going to put the color. It's quite a simple project. I'm starting with the colors and I'm just applying them to the cards. I leave a kind of a frame around the paint, so the card pattern shines a bit through and peeks a bit through on the edges. What I like about the flash paints that they are already a little bit vintagey because some of them are quite muted and a little bit dirty, I would say, like that pink and the blue here, and that's perfect to use for something that should look a little bit vintagey. I'm picking different colors just to create some different kind of cards, and as I said, I try to stay in the vintage range, so I'm using a bit of pale colors, not so bright and intense. For the last card, I'm picking a darker blue. I think that's a really nice color collection I'm having now. I'm storing these paints in these tiny containers in a Tupperware box. It's not an original Tupperware, but it's something that is kind of airtight. From time to time, I'm spraying them with water, and they are in here for over a year now. Some of them already get a little bit dry, so I would not recommend using them or having them too long without replacing them. But I just use them a lot in my sketchbook. Well, not a lot, but regularly, but always just a tiny amount, so they seem to never go empty. As an inspiration, I have this vintagey book I found at a flea market, and the outlines of the images are usually not really black. They all have some kind of a brownish feel to them. So I decided today I will not stamp with black. I'm going to stamp with brown ink. And now, yeah, my cat is visiting, and I have to take a little break from making that voiceover, but you will not recognize this. At first I used the distress oxide for stamping, but I think that was too light in ground espresso, so I picked the distress ink in ground espresso. And you can emboss with distress inks. To make sure that the ink is wet enough, I'm covering the image immediately, but usually they stay wet quite a while, so it's always fine with embossing powder. And I'm using clear embossing powder that gives the image a little bit more dimension, and it also separates the areas of the image more from each other, so it's a bit easier to color it in with wet mediums. And now I'm going to stamp some more of these mushrooms. These are the Inky Mushrooms, and then we are going to color them in. I'm now heat setting the embossing powder on all the mushrooms, and then we are going to color them in with watercolors. I'm using one of the Mai Liang watercolor sets. I really like these sets because they have so many different colors in them, and for me they are perfect, especially for coloring in stamps or for just making something quickly with watercolors, because I don't have to search for the right color. There's almost everything available in these sets. I have one with I think I can't remember the amount of colors, but it's a usual palette and they have some pastels within. And then I have another set with a usual palette and they have some metallics within. And depending on what you like to do, you might like the one or the other better. They were so kind and sent me both in the past, and there is a video available for each of the sets already on my channel. And I really like both of them, and I like the quality of the colors. The Myliang watercolors are from Paul Rubens, so it's their, I would say, student grade watercolor. I'm not very good with coloring in stamped images. It's just something I do not really enjoy doing because I think to make it perfect you have to be very precise, and then I usually overwork things and mess things up, so I try to keep it loose because then I also get a look that I enjoy, and for me the process is also much more enjoyable. But I think you can do a really amazing job with coloring in these mushrooms, for example with alcohol markers. I am not good with that, but I think that might also give some really nice results. I'm also coloring in the mushroom I've stamped with the oxiding. I'm not going to use it later for this project, but I would just keep it for the future. There might come the day when I want to use it. I have a blog post for these cards, of course, over on our shop blog. You can have a look at the close-up images, and there is also a description. And I'm going to link up all the products I'm using in the description of this video. And if you are enjoying this video, please give it a thumbs up and leave me a lovely comment. I'm mixing the colors a bit. I made two different greens. I usually am not a big fan of the greens that come in watercolor palettes. Usually I always mix in some other color to change the shade of it. So here I picked just a little bit of a yellow ochre to tone the green a little bit into a more warmer natural color. Finally, I'm coloring in the stems of the mushrooms. I did not want to leave them purely white because I think that's also not, it's not realistic. Although these shouldn't be realistic, I think keeping that white would be, the contrast would be just too intense. So I'm coming in with some shade of gray. Once the watercolors are dry, I'm going to color in even more with some colored pencils, just to bring in a little bit more intensity to the colors. and to bring in a little bit of texture. I think that gives just a really lovely finish for a vintagey look. I'm going to add some white dots with a Posca paint pen to the red mushrooms, and I try to align them like if they were circles around the mushroom. And I also don't make them really round, I make them a little bit more oval because that's how they look in nature. So they are not perfectly round, they are some kind of little white bits, and they're usually arranged circular wise on the head of the mushroom. Once the Posca is dry, I'm going to add another layer of the white on top so they turn out a bit more intense and more white. And then I'm going to cut out all my mushrooms, and then we can build our cards. I have already put the mushrooms onto the background where I wanted to have them, but I haven't glued them down yet. So now I'm able to create a little bit more texture on the background because it's just a bit empty, I feel, and I'm using that number stamp from our Mix It Up number 6 stamp set. I think it also has some kind of a vintagey feel to it, and I'm using colors that are matching the backgrounds and stamp that image several times. And I think that's just fine for the background. And I'm going to do this to all the other cards with also colors that are matching the background. I picked the cherry pink for that light pink color. I don't know which exact color from Stays On this is. It's some kind of a violet. I'm just stamping it to a piece of scrap paper because there is still a little bit pink from the first ink on the stamp, so I just try to get rid of that shade. You might be able to read what's on that Stays On lid. I can't because my screen is so small when I do the voiceover. I hope I will not forget to check out which color this was and then write it in the video description. I like to use StayZone for stamping on a plastic surface like acrylic paint or vinyl paint, because then I can be sure that everything will dry. And that's just, I don't like when I stamp with an ink on a mixed media surface and then I come back after an hour and it's still wet. And with a StayZone I can be sure that it's going to dry super quickly. I used the olive green for the green card, and for the blue I thought I might want to stamp with white. I usually never stamp with white stamping ink, but I have one. I have a Brilliance ink pad, almost never used, and today I'm using it and I really like how this turns out. It's not super opaque, but it gives some really lovely texture on the background, and I think that's just enough. Usually when I want to have some white background stamping, I use acrylic paint. That also does not give you a good and crisp image because it's paint, but it gives you a really opaque white. Now I'm finishing the cards by adhering the mushrooms. I'm using the Craftelier glue pen. I tried to fit one of these leaves onto the cards, but I think that was just not necessary, and I don't want to use them in the end. These are my cards for today. I hope you enjoyed that video and you are maybe a little bit inspired to create your own. Don't forget to check out our blog posts, and I hope you enjoyed it, and we will see us next time. Bye!